Joining me to discuss is Liberal Senator Dave Sharma. Dave, thanks for coming on the program. Extraordinary,
it's a pleasure, James.
Extraordinary evening. Let's start with the question, how big a deal is it when shadow ministers vote against the shadow cabinet line? Because that's what precipitated this whole episode. So let's just start there. How big a deal was that?
Look, I should say, James, I'm also still happy to talk about the failings of the Albanese government, but I appreciate this is more topical. Look, the principle at stake here is one of cabinet solidarity. You can't have a coalition agreement that's a la carte, where you take what you want and neglect what you want. The whole idea behind the coalition agreement is that internal differences of view and equities and stakeholders are all resolved internally, and then you adopt a position as the shadow cabinet. You take it to the joint party room. If the party room supports it, then all members, and certainly all members of the ministry or the shadow ministry, are bound to vote for it. And it's not tenable to have a situation where one party in the shadow cabinet supports a policy but then does not support it when it comes to the floor of Parliament. And I think that's well recognised as a political principle across the aisle and throughout the history of the Liberal and the National parties as well.
So how tenable is it to have a coalition where one party is not in the shadow ministry at all by choice?
Well, I'm not sure if it is, James, and I think ultimately that will be a question for the Nationals. I don't want to see the end of the coalition, but we've had a situation now where they have all, as I understand it, resigned from the front bench. I think they need to provide a way forward for how they think the coalition arrangement can continue to function, or if indeed whether it can continue to function. And I think, as one of your earlier guests said, Michael Kroger, I think the ball is very much in the Nationals' court here.
Did Susan Lee have to accept these resignations? As I said earlier in the show, apparently David Littleproud did warn her earlier in the day, if you accept these resignations, we are done completely from the front bench. Should she have tried to patch this up and keep things together so that people like yourself can focus on the government rather than your own internal machinations?
Look, I would very much prefer to be focusing on the government rather than our own internal machinations. But, I would say if you run that thought experiment and the resignations were not accepted, then I think effectively you're saying that, regardless of what the position is that's adopted by the shadow cabinet, the shadow ministry can vote according to their own views and perspectives. And that's not a recipe to be a credible or an effective opposition. It's certainly not a recipe to present ourselves as a credible alternative government. I think there's an important issue of principle at stake here. And bear in mind, after the last election, when the coalition was being formed, but it looked for a period though as though it would not be formed, that had been the hurdle that the Nationals had come to Susan Lee with a position saying, we don't want to be bound by cabinet solidarity on all issues. And Susan rightly said at the time, well, look, that's a red line. And Susan's party room, the Liberal party room, agreed with that position entirely. And I don't see that has changed at all. I don't think it's tenable. It can be functional. I don't think it can be effective if that sort of principle is not upheld.
All right. Do you mind if we talk about something other than the coalition? Is that all right?
I'd be delighted, James.
Let's move on to more interesting topics and perhaps some things that are probably a bit more helpful. Tomorrow night from 7 p.m, we've got a special broadcast here on Sky News. We'd love viewers to join us for an incredibly important event. It's called Light Will Win. It's a national service of unity and remembrance, honouring the victims of the Bondi terror attack, broadcast here on Sky News tomorrow night from 7 p.m. It's being organised by the Chabad of Bondi and hosted by our very own James Macpherson. Dave, it's going to be an incredibly powerful and moving service. There's going to be survivors, families, first responders, faith leaders, political leaders. Anthony Albanese will be taking part, as will Chris Minns. How does that message of light will win resonate with you?
I think it's very important. I think it's a very worthwhile initiative. I met Rabbi Ullman last week. He is the rabbi of Chabad of Bondi, and it was his community, the Russian Jewish community, that was the most figured most highly amongst those killed and injured in the Bondi terrorist attack. And I know he's very personally attached to this project, and I think it's important we all get behind it because it's about honouring the memory of the victims, making sure we do not forget the the loss and those grieving family members they've left behind, but also hardening our resolve or strengthening our resolve to make sure we do everything to ensure that the Jewish community can live safely in Australia, and that indeed Australia is safe for all Australians.
And Dave, just before I let you go, one of the things I really like about the event tomorrow night, broadcast here at 7 p.m, is it's being held at the Sydney Opera House, which I think is a really good thing after those shocking scenes we saw at the Opera House in the aftermath of the October 7 attack. To have something like this, sad though it will be, because it's honouring those whose lives were taken, and yet to be able to do it at the Opera House and, I don't know, I guess reclaim that space is a good thing, I think.
I think that's right. I'll be there tomorrow night, James, and I'm looking forward to it. But I think, the Opera House was appropriated by people who had, hate in their souls and venom in their hearts 2 days after the worst loss of Jewish life in a single day since the Holocaust. And it's important that we reclaim the Opera House for all Australians and reassert our national identity of a nation of people who support living with one another, harbour hostility and animosity to none, and believe we should all be able to live together in this country without importing foreign hatreds.
Like I said, that'll be broadcast on Sky News here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. I'd encourage you to tune in. It'll be a really moving and powerful event. Dave Sharma, thanks for joining me.